In fact, I want to share a story. Actually, I want to share a story. I always got to have a story, right?
Go ahead.
About when my father was still alive, I was working at my uncle's house. We were doing a remodeling job. And in the remodeling job, my friend, who's like this, he's a good designer, but he always thinks when there's a sink in the kitchen, that base cabinet needs to be under the window. So he decided in the design to move the sink over to the window, but the only problem was that the pipe that we needed for the faucet was a little further over to the right. So we had to move it over to the left a little bit. The problem was that where the pipes were coming up under the basement, it was fine, but where we needed to move it, the house was on an area where there was some solid pavement underneath the house. So we had to get the pipes over to the other side. So my father said, well, no problem. I have an old friend of mine. This guy is an old school plumber. He's probably about, I think at the time he was probably in his like 73, something like that. So his name was Jinx. That was his nickname. You know, when you're black, you get nicknames like Jinx, Squeaky, Poopy, all those kind of names. But his name was Jinx. So my father said, we're gonna go catch up with Jinx. Jinx will take care of it. But we need to get him in the morning because, like, you know, some of our folks, so he had to make sure that he was sobered up and ready to go. So we get to Jinx's house, and he says, we're gonna get my tank. So I'm thinking Jinx is gonna bring out, like, I hang out with some of my friends that are plumbers, and I figure he's gonna bring out one of those little small blue tanks, or one of those, like, or maybe one of those little yellow tanks, something like that. Jinx goes and gets one of these a big orange tank, about this big, about that wide tank. So we carry that tank and go into the house, and he looks at the situation. And this is what I'm gonna show you how he does it. So, you know, when you're working on a job, you don't always have a chair. Everything was torn up in that house. So he pulls up his crate, sits down in the crate, and he starts, I said, Dad, what's he doing? Leave him alone. He's not ready yet. He's thinking. He look a little more, And then he finally said, you know what we gotta do? Give me my tank. He bring out that big red tank. And I was trying to figure out why did he need a big red tank like that? That pipe, we're gonna have to annihilate it. So he brings out the plane, and instead of bringing it under trying to get it, bust up the floor and everything, he said, no problem, we ain't gonna deal with that. He gets up the big tank and he starts blasting it with fire, blasting the pipes with fire, until eventually the pipe just kind of started to bend down so it can go underneath the cabinet and over to the other side. And see, it wasn't ready yet. And that's what happens with us. Sometimes we have to be put under that fire a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? So that we become a little bit more pliable.
Yes.
So that God can redirect us to the place where He wants us to go.
I like it.
That's the way it works.
That's the way it works.
So I learned a lot from Jinx, old school. You gotta hang out with, you can't just hang out with young folks.